On February 12, 2008, a man whom American intelligence agencies had been hunting for decades was killed in Damascus. His name was Imad Mughniyeh. After his death, Hezbollah openly described Mughniyeh as one of its leading commanders. For the United States, he had long ranked among its most wanted terrorists. For Israel, he was one of the key figures in a war that extended far beyond the Lebanese border. The strangest part was something else. By the time of his death, Mughniyeh's name had appeared for decades in investigations and intelligence assessments connected to major terrorist attacks. Yet his public image remained almost empty. Old photographs, contradictory information about his whereabouts, and differing descriptions of his position. Even reports that he had undergone plastic surgery remained largely speculation rather than established fact. How did a man linked to attacks in Beirut, the hijacking of an American airliner, and bombings against Jewish and Israeli targets in Buenos Aires manage to remain beyond reach for almost a quarter of a century? If stories that reconstruct the exact chain of facts behind a familiar name matter to you, leave a like and subscribe. In this case especially, it is important to separate what was proven from what intelligence agencies merely believed. To understand why Mughniyeh became such a difficult target, we need to return to Lebanon in the 1970s. He was born in 1962 in the south of the country. His youth coincided with the Lebanese Civil War. Biographical information about his early years is incomplete, but researchers have linked him, while still a teenager, to the Palestinian Fatah movement, and later to Yasser Arafat's security organization known as Force 17. After the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982, a movement that would become Hezbollah began to take shape with Iranian support. Mughniyeh was associated with its early security and military corps. But even here, the first problem appears. The positions attributed to him varied. He was described as Chief of Security, Head of Special Operations, Head of External Operations, and leader of the military apparatus. That alone shows how secretive the structure in which he operated actually was. On April 18, 1983, a suicide bomber attacked the United States Embassy in Beirut. 63 people were killed, including 17 Americans. 6 months later, on October 23rd, a truck packed with explosives destroyed the barracks housing the American contingent near Beirut Airport. 241 American service members were killed. On the same day, a French barracks was attacked, killing 58 French service members. American authorities linked these attacks to the early networks from which Hezbollah emerged, and Mughniyeh's name gradually began appearing in material concerning the planning of terrorist operations. But it would be inaccurate to say that a court proved he personally directed every one of these bombings. For some of these incidents, the case rests on intelligence assessments, investigations, and the conclusions of researchers rather than on a verdict against Mughniyeh himself. Even so, after Beirut, he became a personal target for American intelligence agencies. In March 1984, William Buckley, the head of the Central Intelligence Agency station in Beirut, was kidnapped. According to the agency itself, Buckley spent 14 months in captivity and died in 1985. Western investigations connected the network responsible for kidnapping foreigners in Lebanon to radical Shiite organizations, and Mughniyeh to their special operations. Then came the event that resulted not merely in intelligence interest, but in a specific American criminal case against him. On June 14, 1985, shortly after taking off from Athens, Transworld Airlines Flight 847 was hijacked. Armed hijackers forced the aircraft to fly back and forth between Beirut and Algiers. American serviceman Robert Steatham was beaten and murdered. The hostage crisis lasted 17 days. Mughniyeh was not one of the men passengers saw carrying weapons inside the aircraft. The United States accused him of participating in the planning and organization of the hijacking. His name would later appear among those wanted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in connection with the case. This was now a formal legal trail, but Mughniyeh remained beyond the reach of an American court. In the mid-1980s, according to former United States State Department counterterrorism coordinator Robert Oakley, American officials received information that Mughniyeh might be in Paris. Washington discussed the possibility of capturing him, but a dispute emerged inside the administration. Some security agencies supported an operation, while the State Department and Department of Justice feared the consequences of illegally abducting someone on the territory of an allied country. Then, an even more fundamental problem emerged. There was no certainty that Mughniyeh was actually in Paris. The target could not be reliably confirmed. The operation never happened. That episode explains a great deal. Intelligence services had to solve two problems at the same time: determine where he was and prove that the person they were watching really was Mughniyeh. For someone who almost never appeared publicly, that was far more difficult than tracking a political leader who regularly gave speeches and attended public events. In the 1990s, the scale of the story changed. It was no longer only about Lebanon and Americans. On March 17, 1992, an explosion destroyed the Israeli embassy building in Buenos Aires. 29 people were killed and more than 200 were wounded. Argentine and Israeli authorities blamed the attack on Hezbollah, with Iranian support. Western and Israeli sources linked Mughniyeh to Hezbollah's external operations, including those in Buenos Aires. At the same time, his personal role was never established in an open trial in which he himself was a defendant. 2 years later came an attack that would become permanently embedded in the history of Argentina's Jewish community. On July 18, 1994, an explosion destroyed the building of the Argentine Israelite Mutual Association, AMIA, in Buenos Aires. 85 people were killed, and more than 300 were wounded. It became the deadliest terrorist attack in Argentine history. Argentine authorities accused Iranian officials and Hezbollah of organizing the attack. Iran and Hezbollah denied responsibility. American material on Hezbollah's external operations also describes the AMIA bombing as an operation carried out by its clandestine network. In 2023, the United States Department of Justice charged Samuel Sauman El-Reda, describing him as one of the coordinators involved in preparing the Buenos Aires attack. Nearly 30 years later, investigators were still reconstructing not the image of a single super-terrorist, but a network of people, connections, and logistics surrounding Hezbollah's external operations. This is exactly where the image of Mughniyeh can distort our understanding of what happened. If he has turned into an almost mythical figure who supposedly organized everything single-handedly, the real structure disappears. Terrorist operations on this scale require operatives, surveillance, documents, financing, communications, and command. Mughniyeh's significance lay in the fact that he was believed to be one of the people capable of connecting those different levels. We have reached the middle of this story. If this kind of precision matters to you, without turning intelligence assessments into legends, tell us in the comments whether you already knew about the connection between this story and the terrorist attacks in Buenos Aires. And support the video with a like. By the beginning of the 2000s, another paradox had emerged. The more famous Mughniyeh's name became, the less useful public information existed about the man himself. In October 2001, Mughniyeh was placed on the Federal Bureau of Investigation's new list of most wanted terrorists. By 2007, the Bureau was offering a $5 million reward for information that could lead to his capture. But a wanted poster solved only one part of the problem. It gave the world a name and showed a photograph. It did not automatically create sources around a man who avoided public exposure. By 2006, the Council on Foreign Relations was already noting that the known photographs of Mughniyeh were old, and that reports of plastic surgery had no reliable public confirmation. His nickname, the Fox, worked well in newspaper stories, but the real reason he was so difficult to track was more ordinary. Very few public appearances, a closed organizational structure, intermediaries, and the ability to move within an environment of allied organizations and states. The Iranian connection is essential to this story. Researchers studying Hezbollah described Mughniyeh as an important intermediary between the organization and Iranian security structures. His exact formal chain of command remained unclear, but Hezbollah's close relationship with Iran was systemic. That gave Mughniyeh not merely places to hide, but an infrastructure created by political and military alliance. In July 2006, the capture of 2 Israeli soldiers on the border led to a 34-day war between Israel and Hezbollah. After Mughniyeh's death, sources inside the organization acknowledged that he had been one of its key military and strategic leaders during that period. But here again, the boundary between what is known and what is assumed matters. In 2006, Israeli sources claimed that Mughniyeh had personally been behind the operation to capture the soldiers. At the time, however, the Council on Foreign Relations noted that there was no publicly available evidence showing that he personally designed the operation. By then, he had been hunted for more than 20 years. And the decisive breakthrough did not come in Beirut, Tehran, or on the Israeli border. It came in Damascus. After the explosion on February 12, 2008, Hezbollah immediately accused Israel. Israel officially denied involvement. The United States also did not acknowledge any role. 7 years later, the Washington Post, citing 5 former American intelligence officials, reported a different account. According to them, the Central Intelligence Agency and Mossad had jointly prepared the operation. The American side reportedly helped design and test the explosive device, while the Israeli side participated in surveillance and ultimately detonated it. The newspaper reported that the device had been designed to kill Mughniyeh while minimizing the risk to bystanders. The United States never officially confirmed this role. The central fact in this reconstruction requires no spy movie embellishment. According to former officials, intelligence services spent months studying Mughniyeh's repeated movements. A man who had survived for decades, partly because he had no predictable public routine, became vulnerable when surveillance finally identified a stable pattern in his behavior. Then, in September 2024, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert publicly confirmed what Israel had officially refused to acknowledge for 16 years. Israel had indeed been behind Mughniyeh's killing. Olmert did not confirm every detail of the American journalistic reconstruction, nor did he resolve the question of the Central Intelligence Agency's officially unacknowledged role. But after his statement, Israel's responsibility could no longer be described merely as suspicion. Now we can answer the central question. Why did the hunt take almost a quarter of a century? Not because Mughniyeh literally had no face. Photographs existed. Not because intelligence agencies never had any idea where to look for him. Reports about his possible movements appeared repeatedly. And not because he operated alone. The opposite was true. He was difficult to find precisely because he was part of a closed system. He rarely appeared in public. He operated inside an organization where responsibilities were deliberately concealed and external operations were carried out through chains of people. He was linked simultaneously to Hezbollah and Iranian security structures. And when an opportunity for capture appeared, as in the Paris episode, an intelligence lead alone was not enough. His identity and location had to be established with certainty. So the phrase, "the man without a face," works only as a metaphor. Historically, something else is more accurate. Mughniyeh was a man without a stable public profile. His name became internationally famous long before intelligence agencies gained reliable access to the patterns of his everyday life. For Jewish memory, this story matters above all because of Buenos Aires. In 1992, an Israeli diplomatic target was destroyed. In 1994, the AMIA Jewish Community Center was destroyed. The 85 people killed in the second attack are not background material for an intelligence story, and not merely a detail in Mughniyeh's biography. They were human beings, and their deaths were a crime for which families spent decades demanding justice. And here there is one final distinction that matters. The killing of Mughniyeh ended the hunt for one specific man. It did not replace a judicial process for every crime attributed to him. It did not automatically prove every allegation, and it did not end the activities of the organization in which he had played such an important role. The story of Mughniyeh, therefore, is not the story of an untouchable supervillain. It is the story of how modern terrorism can survive for decades at the intersection of clandestine organizations, regional warfare, state support, and international networks. And it is the story of why a name can become known across the world long before anyone fully understands where the man behind that name actually is. If you found this analysis useful, subscribe, leave a like, and share the video. And in the comments, tell us what seems most important to you in this story. The 25-year hunt itself, the human cost of the attacks in Buenos Aires, or the boundary between an intelligence assessment and a proven fact.